Hello my friends and welcome to the latest issue of WiserPod. For this week I'm going to be talking about China and their journey to a cashless society. Now can you imagine a world when you don't have any cash, no notes, no coins, everything you do is using QR codes and your mobile phone? Well, that's the story that we're going to be telling this week, and it's a vision of what's to come. To help me, I speak to an expert in this field, Richard Turrin.
Oh, I'm honored and delighted to speak with you, and I'm having fun. So please, your questions are beautiful and wonderful and thoughtful.
And later on in this video, you're going to hear the discussion I had with Richard, which we recorded a couple of weeks ago. Now, before we get started, this is a reminder to please hit the subscribe button and then little notifications if you're watching this on YouTube. And if you're listening to this as an audio blog, please go back to the Substack page and hit the little heart button, because this is a story of how China turns the world's largest populace into a nation without the need for cash. The old, the young, the poor, the uneducated, from beggars on the street to the largest businesses. Now, it's also a story about central bank digital currencies, aka CBDCs. This is a four-letter acronym that you'll be seeing a lot of as more governments begin the transition to digital currency. As I said earlier, to help me explain this lesson in mass-scale cultural and technological transformation, I turned to an expert with first-hand experience of this fascinating story. Richard Turrin was a banker. He was a business school professor in Shanghai and an IBMer with a brief to reimagine banking in their Fintech division in Singapore. He went freelance as an AI and innovation consultant, writing a highly acclaimed best-selling book called Innovation Lab Excellence. Richard has lived in China for the past 11 years, and he has experienced firsthand China's rapid transformation to a cashless society. There is nobody better placed to tell the story of how China moved the entire population of the world's most populous nation over to cashless payments. A story that is written for his second book, which is called Cashless, China's Digital Currency Revolution. First off, what do we mean by central bank digital currency? Quite simply, a CBDC is a digital version of real money, just like a banknote or a coin. It is a form of money that is issued and banked by a central bank in the same way as the cash you have in your physical wallet right now. But don't confuse a CBDC with cryptocurrency, because they are not the same. They share some similar properties, such as both being controlled using cryptography, and they are both digital assets that can be programmed to behave in certain ways. But where they differ is that a CBDC is legal tender. It is issued and centrally controlled by the government. These are not tradable assets in the same way as, say, Bitcoin or Ether. By contrast, cryptos are created by entrepreneurs and, to quote Elon, hustlers.
So it's a hustle. Yeah, it's a hustle.
Currencies are decentralized and transactions are confirmed through a process called consensus. This is the complete opposite to a centralized CBDC, where the central bank's systems confirm a transaction. Now we need to look back at 2010 to 2014 for the origins of China's cashless society. Now arguably the inspiration for CBDCs is Bitcoin and the emergence of credible alternative cryptocurrencies like Ether. But for China, it was also the government's desire to lift its unbanked into the mainstream. Banks begrudgingly acknowledged that they needed a better way of reaching the rural poor, with services previously limited to the urban wealthy. Add into the mix the desire of the emerging tech giants like Tencent and Alibaba to find easier ways for people to buy things online, and you have the ingredients for technology innovation on a scale that is hard to match. The defining moment occurred in 2014 when the Chinese government allowed WeChat and Alibaba to provide banking services. For WeChat, think WhatsApp, and for Alibaba, think Amazon. By way of contrast, in 2019, Facebook announced it was planning to launch its own digital currency, which was originally called Libra and has now been renamed to Dime. Now, shortly after the announcement, the Facebook-led consortium met with strong opposition from regulators around the world outside of China. Key partners like Visa and MasterCard backed out under the pressure, and Facebook were forced to water down their plans. Now, the reinvented dime is now seeking a payment license through Switzerland's financial regulators, and they plan to launch later this year as a stablecoin in the USA. The reason for highlighting the Facebook story is that it gives us an interesting compare and contrast between China and the United States. 7 years ago, China took a bold step by giving WeChat a banking license. Meanwhile, its nearest equivalent in the West, WhatsApp, has so far been prevented from doing the same. Richard explains it this way in the book. As we look at China's advances, we have to ask why we don't have them in our own countries. The United States in particular, as a master of all things digital, is far behind China in the adoption of digital finance. Banks in the US still expect clients to wait 3 days for deposits to clear, as though we are still back in the days of paper checks. The reasons are difficult to untangle because they are rooted in resistance by incumbent banks to go digital, in combination with regulators that largely protect incumbents from the entry of digital competitors. As a little side note, there's a so what about Dime that shouldn't be missed, which is that the opportunity for Facebook is huge. They have around 2.8 billion monthly active users globally. For many, Facebook is the internet and their only connection to the online world through their smartphones. The potential of Dime to be a near zero cost means for a third of the world's population to move money is game changing. Watch this space. Next, the transition to a cashless society. With the ability to provide banking services now given to the two largest technology innovators, which was Tencent and Alibaba, the landscape changed in China, and quickly. To understand the impact, it's important to look at the two apps that drove this fundamental change. The first is WeChat, also known as the Super App. Now, WeChat is the dominant social platform in China. There is almost nothing that you can't do in the digital world on WeChat. It's the glue that holds everyday life together for almost the entire population. It is used for just about everything to do with the individual's personal life, their banking, and their work. WeChat is more like a separate version of the internet, with everything from messaging, gaming, banking, government services, healthcare, Zoom calls, and payments all in one. Now, the other key app is Alipay. Alipay is part of Alibaba, which is owned by Jack Ma's Ant Group. Now, whilst WeChat handles the online world, Alipay deals with the physical world. To say Alibaba is like Amazon is almost right, but the range of life services is much more expansive with Alibaba. Alibaba brands itself as a life operating system, and it has earned the right to use such an ambitious title. Imagine a company that combines eBay and Amazon with payments like PayPal and banking services like HSBC and the investment brokerage of JP Morgan, whilst also handling your refuse collection and home delivery for tonight's takeaway. Alibaba and Alipay connect the physical world with digital, and they deliver it to the doorstep of almost 1.3 billion people. Now, this story really comes into two parts. Part one is the jump to digital payments. And this is the mass adoption of digital payments. This is how the entire population of China moved in just a handful of years to using QR codes and mobile phone apps for all payments and removing any need to carry cash or coins at any time. It started with WeChat, which was the first company to combine a social network with a digital payment system, drawing the attention of Mark Zuckerberg and prompting the Libra, now Dime, digital currency initiative that I mentioned earlier. Now, the reason digital payments took hold was that the conventional system of credit and debit cards cost money and has barriers to it. If you want to be paid using a credit card, you need a card reader and you have to pay for the privilege. That might be okay if you're Walmart or Tesco, but not if you're selling dumplings on the side of the street. However, these new payment apps broke this model. They were able to act as self-contained intermediaries and take out these costs and remove the need for specialist equipment. To illustrate the point, if you use Square or PayPal to receive a payment, they charge around 3%. I know myself because we use Stripe here at Wiser, and they take 3% of everything that you spend with us online. However, China's payment apps perform the same service for free or 0.1% for larger transactions. The effect on the Chinese economy was dramatic. In 2019, mobile payment transaction volumes in China was a massive $58.1 trillion. That's more than 3 times China's GDP, which is about 14.4 trillion. WeChat and Alipay control about 98% of that payment market. The key stat is the multiple of GDP. This shows how mobile payments are used not just to buy coffee or dumplings by the side of the street, but for business-to-business transactions, and for an incredible 83% of all payment transactions that flow within the Chinese economy. Now compare this to the United States, who have a GDP 3 times greater than China. In the same year, the purchase volume of Visa, MasterCard, American Express and Discover was less than 13% of China's volume at only $6.6 trillion. Now, according to data from the People's Bank of China, mobile payments increased 36 times from 2013 and more than doubled from 2016, when mobile payment was already well established. If you compare Apple Pay and Android Pay, which are the top 2 mobile payment methods used in the United States, and you compare them with WeChat and Alipay, the 2 mobile payments used in China, the difference is simply astounding. In 2019, WeChat and Alipay in China serviced 2.3 billion customers, whilst Apple and Google Pay barely broke 500 million. Part 2 of this story is the implementation of the digital currency in China. Work on China's digital currency began back in 2014. These things aren't thrown together overnight like some cryptocurrencies. Then last year, they launched the pilot, and it's called the DCEP, which stands for Digital Currency Electronic Payment. Digital money is known as digital yen, obviously. But the most important thing to know is that the digital yen is a digital equivalent of the official currency in all ways, including its value. And most importantly, the People's Bank of China maintains centralized control over the new digital currency, just as it does with paper money. And to minimize disruption to the existing banking system, China have adopted a 2-tier system, unlike the single-tier architecture of the sand dollar, which is the digital currency in the Bahamas. This means that retail banks will continue to manage their network and relationships with end customers, and they will receive digital yen currency directly from the central bank. The features of China's digital currency, which differentiates it from the traditional card payment systems, is that users can make limited digital payments whilst offline. This is through a concept known as loose coupling, which is possible only through a process called tokenization. This is where the digital currency is stored in a cryptographic form on a mobile device and can be transferred to another device without the need to have a network connection. It is this feature above all others that makes the digital currency the viable alternative to hard cash. Another key component is the wallet. This is the user interface where digital currency is stored, expended, or received. The wallet is provided by the retail banks and not by the central bank. China has made a concerted effort to avoid disrupting the banking network. By allowing retail banks to provide the wallet, it gives the banks an opportunity to develop one-on-one relationships with their customers based on value-added services. It also means that the People's Bank of China does not have to deal with managing 1.3 billion relationships. Already, the DCEP, China's digital currency, is being extended and tested across large parts of the economy. The government are issuing digital yen for the population to use and to test the system. For example, lottery winnings are being paid as digital currency. Last month, Chinese e-commerce giant JD.com announced it was paying employees in digital currency. Now, this is only the start. Although these are early days for the digital currency and there's a long way to go, the potential is huge. Imagine this: programmable money. Take the COVID stimulus checks issued to every American registered in the tax system. Today, the government has no idea what that is being spent on. With a digital currency, the digital cash could be programmed to be spendable only at food stores or for essential supplies, and not on Robinhood or on Fortnite. Imagine the central bank being able to change interest rates instantly across the network, immediately impacting all transactions. Now, of course, there are also major risks that need to be considered, such as significant disruption to the economy from cyber attacks. You only have to look at how the dark side ransomware attack on the Colonial Pipeline last week disrupted an economy the size of the East Coast of America to see the potential. Which is why it's so important that the whole world watches closely to what is happening in China, because you can be certain CBDCs are coming to a central bank near you. Now, next up is my discussion with Richard Turrin. A couple of weeks ago, we had a Zoom call, and these are the highlights of my discussion with Richard as we talk about China, their move to a digital currency, and his new book called Cashless. I hope you enjoy.
I have really, really enjoyed the book, because I love the content, but also the style. And I was thinking, why did I not pick up our connection 2 or 3 years ago when we first connected? Because I'd have loved to have had conversations with you, because I've been fascinated with China for probably since about 2017. Because I was doing this whole thing around insurance technology and insurtech. One of my standard pitches was to the West, when I was talking to insurers, was if you really want to see what the future is going to look like, don't look at these little upstarts in North America who say we're going to disrupt insurance, and basically they're just taking a traditional insurance product, putting a web veneer on it, so it's lipstick on a pig, and saying, look how we're changing this. If you want to really see, go look at Zongang. They're doing 99% AI underwriting. They're doing 95% of claims without any human touch. They're doing like 85% of their customer services with chatbots. If you really want to know what the future is, and they're atomizing insurance.
You're so right. I mean, look, I've been screaming this for years, and that's why the third chapter in my book resets out to tell people who are not convinced that China is relevant, that why it is. Because I feel that these are emotional, people have so much emotional baggage saying, what happens in China is so irrelevant to us, who cares? We have to acknowledge that there's certain parts of China that I understand you don't want to copy, but there's other stuff that you do, and you have to really be aware.
What is it like from a Westerner's perspective of living in China? Because from the outside, you sort of got this view that it is a sort of a big brother 1984 state, and nobody goes about normal business as we would understand it, normal lifestyle. I mean, what is it like living in Shanghai?
So the answer to anyone who has never been here is that if you go to Shenzhen, Hong Kong, Beijing, any of the big 1 and some of the tier 2 cities, you would find them remarkably similar to our cities. And by and large, life is exceedingly normal. The one thing you would note if you were walking the streets there are tremendous, there's a lot of uniformed security guards. They are not police. The streets are clean. People would never dream of vandalizing, graffitiing, or otherwise doing bad stuff, because there are security cameras, because there are human guards that are in greater numbers than perhaps you'd find in the West. Mm-hmm. But it is tremendously normal. And, there are some positive things that we don't have in the West. You can leave your Macintosh computer on the table of a coffee shop go away for 2 hours, and you come back and it's still there. That part is very nice. So we have a vision of what China is that is largely formed by negative reporting, and the reality of life in a big city here is really quite nice. Now, I don't argue that there are parts to Chinese society that we would like to change. But by and large, China is a nice place to live and very comfortable. I've been here for this is my 11th year now. So right now, central bank digital currencies are being beaten, and particularly China's are being beaten over the head by privacy issues. Meanwhile, if you look at the payment systems that we use in the United States for digital payment, which are credit card based, whether it's a Apple Pay or Google Pay, it's still attached to a card. All of these transactions go through many data brokers, many different segments in the card process, all of which your data is being sold with.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
You know, it's really ironic that, so I'm reading these articles from the Western journalists railing against poor privacy with payment. Meanwhile, Edward Snowden is in exile in Russia for, in part, telling us that the NSA had cracked the Visa and the MasterCard network.
One of the things that struck me with the way that you've kind of like told the story is the ease with the steps of how you've moved a society very quickly in a matter of years to a cashless society, and that's like stage one, and then that makes it so much easier now for the transition.
I mean, that really gets to the root of what is fintech disruption. Our digital world, we demand that we should be able to send cash as easily as we send an email. And that means that we should have no intermediary in between, and we should not have to lose 2 or 3% of our hard-earned money each time we transact. And that's really the revolution that central bank digital currencies are going to bring to the West. And it's the revolution of free payment that has already been realized through version 1.0 systems here in China going back 7 years. And that's where we have to get.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to look forward to. And once that payment is free, a whole new world of opportunity exists to build and to create new services and new financial products, and you will all be the better for it because your money will be free of these chains. Your money is enslaved right now to third-party institutions who hold it captive for 2 and 3%, whatever charge to transfer it. And that's the goal of bank digital currency, is to make these transfers free and digital and easy, and that's a good future to live into.
I get that transformation already, even in the digital 1.0 version. You've described the sort of 2-tier CBDC. That makes complete sense. But where I was sort of thinking, but can you still create your intermediary layer, because you've got your central bank, then you're going to have your commercial bank, and then you maybe have your wallet. So you might have WeChat wallet, and therefore you're now creating layers. And if you've got 3 layers, you could have 4, because someone's going to say, well, if I add my bit onto your bit, is there a danger that this actually then just recreates what you kind of have now? That kind of makes sense.
That makes sense. And the answer is, the reason why you have 2 layers is so that the traditional relationship between you and your bank is maintained. Okay, so if you want to go get cash now, you go to your bank, or you go to your bank's ATM machine and you get a wad of cash. So money, where does it come from? It comes from your bank. Basically, the 2 tiers mandate that you still use a bank. And that's good because the central bank doesn't want to entirely disrupt the commercial banking business. Now, you can look at small islands, look at the Bahamas and look at the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, and particularly the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank. They can do what I believe they've done as a single tier. I have to check myself, but a small place with a very limited population, you could technically bank central bank directly and it wouldn't matter because they're on small islands. There is no commercial bank for them. So you're disrupting anything. For a large industrialized economy, to cut the banks out is problematic. But what you have to understand, and here's the good part of it, is once you have your digital currency, you'll be free to keep it on or transfer it to whatever you want. So now people are starting to get, JD.com announced last week, and this is big, that they're starting to pay employees in central bank digital currency as a test. So I am sure that for now they are paid into a bank digital wallet, but at some point in the future, they can have it paid into a WeChat digital wallet or an Alipay digital wallet. Once you've got the digital money, it's yours to do with as you please, as you're free to do with cash. So I don't see an additional tiering taking place. what I do see a modeling of the digital world after the paper cash world so that banks are not too severely disrupted.
So what is in it for the bank? In the new model, how do banks make their money? What is their incentive to being, the retail, bank for customers when actually now there isn't the 3%?
Sure, the data, very simple. So look, the way the central bank digital currency system is set up right now, you will get your central bank digital currency from your normal bank account. Your normal bank account stays at the bank. Nothing changes. You go to an app and you say, hey, I want to convert 2,000 RMB to digital currency. You say 2,000, you push the button, boom, on your phone, you now have 2,000 of this. Now, if you spend it using that banking app, the bank now has some digital trail for you to understand how or why you spent your money. What fundamentally happened is people gave up their plastic debit cards, okay? But those debit cards were data flow into the bank. As soon as WeChat and Alipay came along, and it's really interesting, I have a bank statement that shows this. So I think it's in the book or maybe one of our presentations. But it basically shows a bank statement from ICBC, my bank. And all it shows is WeChat, Alipay. All they know, the banks, is that money went to Alipay or WeChat. That's it. They have no data. Meanwhile, WeChat and Alipay know exactly where I'm spending my money and why and on what. So the incentive for the banks is twofold. One, to recapture the data stream of information about clients whom they have lost all, at least in China, they have lost all touch with. They have no idea what their clients are doing and where they're spending. And the second thing is to eventually regain the wallet. In other words, right now, as I've said, you could take digital currency and you could move it from one wallet to another. Well, eventually what they want to do is to say, keep the money on our wallet, because if you keep it there, you'll get cheaper Uber or DD, which is the local Uber version of car, right? You'll give you a discount on this. We'll do this for you. We'll give you points. We'll give you incentives to continue to use our wallet versus the WeChat and Alipay wallets, which will be hard because remember, WeChat and Alipay are tremendously sticky platforms. They are all encompassing. But still, it's a way for banks to regain data and regain some control of the customer so that you are not just using them as what I call a dumb pipe.
The areas which is fascinating for me as well is around smart contracts and feature that is turned off at the moment. Presumably put a smart contract into a coin.
So the answer is there are sort of two forms of intelligence that are built into bank digital currency. One is an actual contract, a smart contract saying, okay, I'm paying you 1,000 RMB and you're going to give me a health plan. And actually I can put the terms of the health plan into a smart contract and embed it in the coin process. So that's the first means of embedding intelligence in the coin. The second means is through what we call big data. In other words, I have a coin. I can see where that coin is. I know that that coin is going to a healthcare provider. So any coin that goes to a healthcare provider gets a discount or gets something attached to it. So there's sort of two means of providing this, what I call intelligence. Now, let me give an example. When they did the Shenzhen trials of digital currency, there were essentially three, maybe four, let me think here, forms of big data built into the coins. Number one is that when you got your 200, if you won the lottery and got 200 RMB in digital currency, number one, it was impossible to upload it to your bank account. So that's the first limitation. Now that's not a contract, that's a big data. So these coins are numbered and anything in that number can't be uploaded to a bank, right? The second one was that it could only be used in Shenzhen. Okay, so at the time of the first trial, it was obvious that you couldn't use it anywhere else because there were no other trials. But by the second and third trial, there were other cities that were also using, but they were geographically limited. Second, the third one is it had a time limit. So you had to use and spend the 200 RMB within a set amount of time, or else it would disappear. So those were at least three, and I think there's probably a fourth, but those were three of the big data supplied intelligent features built into the coin. Now, you can go the next level, and the next level is what are the smart contracts. Smart contracts are essentially full like an investment contract, an insurance contract. I buy something from you, and you give me a coin back, and it specifies what I've purchased or what it is what rights I have to ownership. That hasn't been turned on yet because it's a complicated thing, and nobody wants. It's great, but it has risks associated with it. And digital autonomous that's what I was looking exactly what the DAOs, the digital autonomous organizations, are built on smart contracts. If there's a error in the coding, things can go wrong. The central bank doesn't want to expose itself to something going wrong early on. They just want to keep it plain vanilla and basic to make sure everything goes on.
And let's face it, it is early days for smart contracts. So, there's lots of talk. I mean, I've done lots of talk on the potential of smart contracts, and particularly when you look at the whole Ethereum network and what they're doing there in the DeFi space. But it is early days, and and like we said before, there's a massive opportunity for someone to get it wrong, because ultimately you've got lines of code that are very difficult to read and debug and understand, and somebody could just hide one little thing in a 1,000 lines of code that send all the money this way instead of this way. So there's if you think about how complex the digital currency already is, that's the last thing that you need to achieve on launch. Now a couple of years from now, they'll figure it out. Everybody will have digital currency in China, and everybody will be happy. But the headline item is that there's intelligence built in at a smart contract level, and then also at a big data level. A lottery is a great example. You've won 100 units of whatever currency you're in, but you've got 6 months to spend it, and you can only spend it in Walmart, or you can only spend it in on whatever. And then you could wrap those constraints into the cash, the digital cash.
Hold on, and this is real. This is, you have to think. We just look, we're living through coronavirus. We've just given payments in the United States. We've given payments to a big part of the population, and we're going to give even greater cash support to people, and we're using checks and plastic cards to get rid of to spend it, right?
Exactly.
Why wouldn't we want to use a central bank digital currency? And why wouldn't we want to have features built in, especially for affluent people, that the money is spent, or that it disappears, or that it has to be spent in your community? I mean, look, it's digital money.
Yeah, exactly.
You can build all kinds of stuff into this, and someday you may get that, and that's absolutely a reasonable use case. But clearly that's not something that would be available to an insurer out of the box first year or two of use. But you can, because money is digital, you can look at that as a benefit and look at that as something to look forward to in the future. Just so you know, now it's this very controllability of money that many people object to. They believe that all money should be uncontrolled, whether it's cash that is uncontrolled, or whether it's digital money in the form of Bitcoin or cryptocurrency, which should be uncontrolled. And that, of course, comes in direct conflict with government, who believes it's their job to control money. So that's a landmine I'm not going to step on today.
The question of privacy, I want to come back to. At the moment, there will be, there are populations around the world where cash is still king, and you will still find that the individual's got a big suitcase of cash under the bed, and they don't trust anybody. They don't want the tax man to know. They don't trust the bank manager. There's an inherent, and these are countries that have resisted going to checks. When you go to a digital currency, there is going to be an argument that says, well, now the government can see where all my money is, right? They're going to be able to. Well, you say in the book that it's going to be private. They're not going to be tracking where everyone's money is, although of course there will be a digital footprint to it. I mean, is that sustainable?
Let's talk about privacy. And just to be clear, so in the book, what I say is that it is with China's central bank digital currency, data from every transfer will go back to the People's Bank of China. So PBOC has the right to see every transaction made with every digital coin. That's and that is what some people are very much opposed to. Who sees that data? So sometimes the bank sees it, sometimes the bank, depending on the use, there are very strict rules as to who can see what. So for a basic small transaction, unlike a credit card in the United States, if I buy a coffee and I swipe my card, I surrender my data to the retail store, the Starbucks where I bought the coffee. With the central bank digital currency, I can select to be anonymous and not submit data to that person, okay? So the person who sells me the coffee does not know who I am, has none of my data, right? That's an improvement in China terms relative to Alipay and WeChat Pay, where data transfer is automatic and you have no selection. It is also an improvement on Visa and MasterCard in the sense that when I swipe a Visa or MasterCard or Apple or Google Pay, which use these networks, I have no choice as to how much data I give over. China's central bank digital currency in privacy at the retail level is an improvement both for China and compared to Western cards. It is arguably not an improvement, and this is what people go ballistic over, because the central bank says, well, we control the computers that make this big network and watch all the coins to see where they're going. And because of that, we have the right to see where the coins go. Now, what they've wisely done is they have separated one network for following the coins and another network for matching the coin to the person. So the PBOC, let's just say there's a team. We're the big data team, and our job is to find out how many coffees people bought on May 1st. And so if you want, let's just say it's next year, or a couple of years from now, everybody's using central bank digital currency. Yeah. Oh, okay, we can now see exactly who bought coffee in all of China with central bank digital currency. Hurrah, isn't that a wondrous big data feat? And that's true. However, those computers are separate to the computers that have the name and the identifiers to the people. Those who complain about lack of privacy for central bank digital currency in China make it as though this is something new. When we use WeChat and Alipay, it is well known that the tax authorities and the central government has a direct link into the payment data of WeChat and Alipay. So it is not as though this is new to the government. It is new in the sense that it gives a greater level of detail, but it is not new in the sense that if the Chinese government fears that you are a tax evader, they had no idea what you were spending on WeChat and Alipay. They just go to the data stream, look you up.
They go and look at it anyway.
So the concept, let's say this. Here's what you will read in the nightmare scenario about China's central bank digital currency. With central bank digital currency, the government will know where you have spent all your money and can identify it to you. And you run the risk of being blocked or having your payment means blocked in China. There is no discussion that Currently, since 2014, when Alipay and WeChat Pay have been big institutions, the government already has access to all of your data. Should they want to cut you off of the payment system, they could have done it over the last 7 years. We have no evidence that the Chinese government is randomly targeting individuals throughout major cities with blocking their payment capabilities. There is no evidence of this. Now, I submit to you one further important piece of data. Any bank account that is suspect for money laundering or KYC violations can be shut down immediately. And the best examples of these are Revolut, because Revolut shuts down accounts all the time, and they have a very digital help desk, so people can't get to it. So they're complaining, my Revolut account has been blocked. The parallels between the West and China for this digital currency, where the nightmare scenarios that are cast off make no acknowledgement of what already exists in China, nor do they acknowledge the systems of banking that we have.
And that's all we have time for the conversation with Richard Turrin. I hope you enjoyed that insight into the cashless society in China. And as a final plug, I do recommend highly the book called Cashless, which you can get on Amazon, on Kindle. Thanks very much for watching this much longer version of the WiserPod. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you do, please leave us a comment in the section below. And if you've listened to this on the audio blog on Substack, please press the heart button, and do remember to subscribe so that you don't miss any of the videos we put out on the Wiser channel on YouTube. Till next time, and remember, insight and information gives you leverage.